Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for 5 ways to make room for science in an ELA and math world. My name is Dawn, and I am the teacher program manager here at the Van Andel Institute for Education. And with me is my colleague, Corey. Hey, Corey.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. Corey, we are so excited to share just our ideas and strategies and resources to help teachers make room for science. And Corey, you're an instructional specialist, so you work with students all the time, all day, right?
Yes, I do. K-12, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So Corey does our field trips, he does our after school program. So we're just really excited to share with you some experiences that we've had, strategies and resources to help you make room for science. All of those resources can be found in the handout that Heather has put into the chat box. Hey, Heather.
Hi, how are you, everyone?
We're doing great here, and thank you for being behind the scenes and helping out. So if you run into any issues, make sure to reach out to Heather. She's be sure to help you with that. And of course, this webinar is being recorded. So if you're watching live, awesome. Thank you for being here. And if you're watching the recording, thank you so much for joining in on that as well. Today's webinar is brought to you by our Blue Apple projects. These are project-based learning units that are meant to engage students, teach the content you need to teach, all while making the world a better place. That sounds amazing, doesn't it? And the projects come with everything you need to make that happen. And because you're watching the webinar today, you get a 10% off your next project using the coupon code webinar at blueappleteacher.org. So before we jump into today's content, Corey and I are curious to find out who's with us tonight. So if you would kindly complete the poll, just take a few moments and just identify which grade level of students do you teach. And Heather's going to let that run just for a few moments. And then when that's all set, Heather, if you want to share those results.
Okay. All right, it looks like we have 29% K through 2, 57% 3 through 5, 29% 6 through 8, 0% 9 through 12, and 43% admin or other.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I love to see the different grade levels represented. Now, obviously, we're looking at more in the elementary classrooms where you're having to teach everything, and how do you make that room for science? But even if maybe you're not in that situation, this is definitely information you can bring back and you can use, within your school and your district. So thank you again for joining us. So our time together, we're going to very, very quickly talk about the why, why it matters, why this is an important topic. And then we're going to spend the majority of our webinar, Corey and I are going to share 5 big ideas to make room for science with some resources and strategies you can put into practice right away. So let's start off with that why. We're doing a little research, and we came across this study from the National Survey of Science and Mathematics, and they found at the K3 level that students were taught roughly 89 minutes in ELA a day, 57 minutes a day in math, and 18 minutes a day for science. Now, there's a huge disparity there, and I'm sure this is not a shock to anyone on the line here. And then it was just marginally higher in the upper elementary grades as well. So how do we make sure we, the time that we do have for science, we're making the most out of it, but how do we also increase that time in such a busy and packed day? So I'm curious to find out kind of where are you on that continuum? So how much time do you get a week for science? And Heather's going to open up another poll here. Just take a few moments and kind of think about how much on average, right, do you get a week for science? And maybe that changes depending on the time of year. But Heather, go ahead and let us know kind of what those break down to.
All right, the results are coming in. Hold on just a second here. Okay, it looks like 13% less than 30 minutes, 25% 30 to 60 minutes, 25% 1 to 2 hours, 38% 2 to 3 hours, and 0% more than 3 hours.
Okay, all right. All right, so obviously we know that there's limited time in our crazy busy packed schedule when you have to teach all the different subject areas. So how can we make science happen in your classrooms? So that's one area, looking at the time. But another why I wanted to talk about is really that why are we talking about science, and why is this so important for our youngest learners? Well, I found this quote from the National Research Council that I thought was really on point, and I couldn't say it any better. So I wanted to share that with you. Science learning begins long before children enter formal education. Their innate curiosity about the world and how it works prompts them to independently develop rudimentary forms of scientific investigations and design activities to find answers to their questions and solutions to their problems. So think about that. You know, the children, the students, when they're born, they can't verbalize yet, but they're still trying to figure out how the world works. So still trying to solve problems. Let's build on that curiosity, and keep that going. And I had the opportunity this past Monday to sit down with our Chief Scientific Officer, Dr. Peter Jones, and ask him this very question. So I wanted to share with you his response to that as well. So we're going to play this really quick video.
I think it's very important for young people to learn about science because it teaches them how the world works. And most importantly at the moment, it teaches them the value of critical thinking, distinguishing truth from fiction.
So that was our Dr. Jones commenting on how important it is for our youngest learners to continue that discovery, right? How the world works, and that critical thinking that's so important to discerning between fact and fiction, which we know is such an important skill, not only in science, but just in life. So now we're going to dive into those 5 ways, those 5 big ideas to make room for that science that's so important to bring into the classroom. So Corey, I'm going to turn things over to you to share our first big idea here.
All right, here we go. So our first idea really is trying to take advantage, or making sure that we take advantage of the time that we have when it comes to science in the classroom. So we already know, Don just talked about how little time we actually have to teach science with our kids. So thinking about what can we do to make the most of our time is really important when we have so little of it. So our first idea here, we call it Think 15. So just some of the things that you can do in those short amount of times that are very powerful for your students. So the first thing with Think 15 that we have here are STEM challenges. So these are simple and easy activities that you can do with your students, but it engages them at a high level, and they're very excited, and they're very into the challenges in the short amount of time that you have. And one of the things that I love about STEM challenges is that you can use very, very simple materials, or you could use a little bit more complex materials depending on what you have available, but it all kind of works the same with your students as far as the engagement level. So we have 4 examples here on the screen, and all of these are linked in our handout as well. But I want to highlight the blow the house down. So that is taken right from the 3 Little Pigs story. There's a big bad wolf, and he is there to blow the house away. So the students are challenged with building a house either out of straw, out of stick, or out of brick, or we use blocks in this case. And then after they've built that house, the big bad wolf tries to blow it away. And so we this does have a unique maybe material with a leaf blower. So we use a leaf blower to create that big bad wolf wind. And then the wolf tries to blow those houses away. So all of these challenges are designed so your students can reflect afterwards, and they can think about, what worked well with their challenges, what was maybe a struggle for them. And so these are all really great things that you could try. Next up, we have the inquiry in action. So these are a variety of science topics that you can use and that can be covered with your students in 15 to 30-minute lessons. So again, that short amount of time. These are all inquiry based, and they are all standards aligned. Now, what I really love about these is that there are about 4 to 5 lessons that go with each topic. But if you only have time to teach one of those lessons, that's all you have time to do, then that works just as well. So you can do that. You could also teach all 5 if you have the time. And all the lessons are designed so so you're ready to implement those in your classroom. So these are just a couple of the topics that we have available.
And these are all in the HyperDoc as well, right, Corey?
Yes, they are. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Next up, we have the Innovation Corner. So this is really designed to maybe access that creative side of your students. So, we think about those challenges that I mentioned earlier, those STEM challenges. An Innovation Corner can be used for maybe kind of open-ended construction time or whatever it might be for your students to get them engaged with that creative part of their minds. Or you can have it be more directed with those challenges, like the Blow the House Down challenge. You can use whatever you have available in your classroom as far as materials go. And so it's very flexible on what the Innovation Corner looks like. I really like it because we've all had those students that maybe finish a little bit early on the main topic that you're trying to cover for that day. And we're always, what do we do with that student? And so they can go over to the Innovation Corner and they can engage in those different challenges. And it's a bonus too, because depending on what you have available to you, you can extend the content that you're learning in ELA or math to that Innovation Corner. And now they're looking at science and engineering and they're still engaging in that content.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you talked about Blow the House Down. That obviously there's a literacy tie there. So there's something you can even tie cross-curricularly in this Innovation Corner. It'd be a great opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right, and then the last kind of idea for our Think 15 we have here is a wonder wall. So discovering what your students are curious about is a very powerful tool. So, if you're covering or if you have a certain content that you want to talk about or cover with your students, ask them what they want to know about that content. You'll be surprised what your students can come up with. And we have here on the screen, we use a tech tool called Padlet. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later when we get to another part of the webinar. But the Padlet is a really great tool, a really easy tool for your students to post things and to share ideas with each other. So if you have a new content that you're covering with them, ask them what they're curious about. And then you, as the teacher, can start to see some of those trends and maybe some of those duplicates as far as ideas go that the students really want to know about. And then you can take that and maybe tailor that for your upcoming lesson. And if they're engaged and they're coming up with those questions, they're really going to want to learn about what you are trying to teach there.
That's great. I love all these ideas and the Think 15, science, engaging science, 15 minutes at a time. Those are fantastic. And kind of to piggyback off of that wonder wall that Corey was mentioning and kind of creating that culture of asking questions, being curious, being collaborative. That's our next really big idea here, is really thinking about that culture that you're creating in your classroom, and particularly a science thinking culture. We've asked scientists, this has been a few years ago, okay, what are the skills that you need to be a successful scientist? And those are the same skills that we want to teach our students, to solve problems. And this is what they gave us. And if you notice that content knowledge, that science knowledge, is a very small portion of it. And all those other skills, critical thinking, like Dr. Jones mentioned, creative thinking, curiosity, perseverance, all those skills that we know as educators are so important that aren't necessarily recognized on our state assessments, right? But we need to make sure that we're putting as much value on those as we do that content knowledge as well. So a way to bring that science into your classroom is just thinking about that culture that you're building for science thinking. And I just wanted to share with you one of our favorite strategies when it has to do with thinking or metacognition. This is our habits of mind. These are the 8 scientific habits of mind that we intentionally share with our students. We teach them, we have them reflect on them, and this is, I mentioned, one of our favorites, and it's going to be much better for you to see it than for me to explain it. So let me show you this in action, one of our after school programs here.
Choosing habits of mind is a great strategy to encourage metacognition. Habits of mind are different skills or thinking strategies that students can use when they're engaging in critical or creative thinking. They are things like adaptability, perseverance, curiosity. They can be any skills or thinking strategies that you want your students to be engaged in when you're doing classroom activities. Once I've established what our habits of mind are, then it's just a matter of taking a few moments to have our students pick which habits of mind they feel are most applicable to the activity they've been doing.
After the activity, I think creative thinking was still helpful, but what else was helpful was openness to new ideas, because if your partner was like, oh, I think like this notch should fit in here, you gotta be able to like consider that.
I really love Habits of Mind because it's so simple to implement and can be used with almost any activity that requires creative or critical thinking. Activities like engineering challenges or inquiry-based investigations are really great opportunities for students to think about their thinking. I have students pick their top 3 habits of mind that they felt were most useful and move them around on a board in the classroom so we can see what each student is using. I also record these habits of mind in my own document so that I can see what habits of mind students are and are not using. This helps me guide my instruction in further activities so I can encourage students to use different skills that they have not been using. Choosing habits of mind is a really great strategy, super simple to implement, and I would highly recommend using it in your classroom.
Hey, like I mentioned earlier, this is a strategy that we use a lot. Corey, I know you use this a lot with your students as well. And it's just, yeah, it's just a really powerful way to reflect on thinking and helping build that science thinking culture. If you're interested in more strategies similar to that, that are really quick hitting but very powerful, I have those added into the HyperDoc as well, so feel free to take a look there. But I'm going to turn over to Corey for our next big idea.
All right, yes. So think outside. So this one is really designed to think about outside the walls of your classroom. What are those resources out there that can help you teach science or bring science to your students in an engaging sort of way? So the very first thing we have here are field trips. Field trips are a great thing for your students to experience when we're thinking about science. We do over 40 different, or have over 40 different topics of field trips here at Van Andel Institute that we offer for K-12. But you know, we're not the only place that you can go. You can go to your local library or your local museum, and there are a lot of web sources as well, and we've linked a few of those in the handout as well, that are maybe some virtual options for you to experience with your students. So if you don't have access to resources, field trips are a great option to bring your students to those resources to get them to experience that science. And you know, we have a video here that we're going to play here to kind of give you an idea of what field trips are like at our building and how powerful they can be.
As a teacher, this turns out to be a great opportunity for our students, most importantly because it's led by instructors who are very skilled in their craft. They keep the kids very engaged, they ask inquiry-based questions that really help the kids continue to think and do their own thinking in order to accomplish the task.
So that's just a little bit of the field trips that we offer at our building and some of the cool things that we can do with students. And again, getting that science to the students is very important. Then the next thing we have are, when you're thinking outside, think of experts. So that real world relevance piece. So if you're teaching certain content, having an expert come talk with your students that actually uses that science or uses that engineering can be a powerful thing. And so we have linked in the handout, we have a couple of options or different options, resources for you to use. But again, reaching out to museums, reaching out to libraries is always a great resource as well to bring those experts in to really talk to your students and say, hey, this is why it matters, and to help them understand really what that science or that engineering is.
Mm-hmm.
Then next, thinking about our middle school and high school colleagues, relying on those people around us is always very important. So thinking about middle school or high school colleagues that are teaching just science, right? If you have an idea, run it by those colleagues. It could be something as simple as, hey, I'm thinking of this idea. What do you think of that idea? Or how could I do this in my classroom? And they would love to help you out. It could be something maybe a little bit more complex where high school teacher is bringing their students into your classroom to teach your students a certain topic. So thinking about your middle school and high school colleagues is always a great resource when thinking about science.
Yeah, absolutely. Reaching out to those, and they're definitely willing and want to help. Absolutely, absolutely.
And then the last idea, get outside, right? So you might not have a lovely mountainscape landscape outside your door. I wish I did, but you have some sort of outside, some area maybe that you could bring your students to, whether it's in the city, whether there's maybe a little bit of wooded area, or if it's the playground outside. Having your students walk around outside, and really you could kind of frame it as an open exploration, getting in tune with their senses, understanding, making critical observations. It's a powerful tool, and it's very cost friendly because you can just go outside.
Absolutely. We're going to take a really quick poll here because that's 3 really big ideas that we shared, and we're going to follow up then with the last 2. But Heather's going to open up a poll and just maybe think about those. Like, what are those them you gravitate towards? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it all of them? Thinking about every 15-minute STEM challenges, or this innovation corner, quick hitting powerful lessons, or thinking outside, outside of your classroom, or who can you go to, the experts, and that culture, building that scientific thinking culture for your students. And Heather, when that kind of slows down, you're going to share the results there?
Yeah, okay, so 88% like the think 15 ideas,
Yeah.
63% think culture,
Okay.
and 38% think outside.
Okay, fantastic. So glad
Awesome.
you found an idea, right? Something that to kind of maybe even try to think about by the end of this week, something that you can possibly do. So love that. Thank you. All right, so we're going to end. I know we're getting a little tight in time, Corey, so we might have to go a little bit quicker than we thought. Yes. We always do that, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
for our 4th idea here, we have thinking about our technology. How does technology play a role in your classroom when you're thinking about or teaching science with your students? So I mentioned Padlet earlier. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but really Padlet can be a critical tool when thinking about collaboration with your students. It's really easy to use, and it allows students to see others' work, and then they can have that conversation or that discourse around a certain challenge. So like the example here, we have the paper skyscraper challenge. This was done during the pandemic with some of my students. They had a piece of paper, they had some tape, and they had to build the tallest tower. They posted a picture of that, and then we had a kind of a discussion around what worked well and maybe what was more of a challenge for them. Next, we have PhET interactive simulations. So these are exactly what it says, simulations for different science topics. I love this resource because there is a bunch of different topics available for teachers, whether elementary all the way up to high school. But really, this is just a simple way for students to experience maybe an idea, a science idea, but do it in a virtual way. So like the example here, the balloons and static electricity, understanding what happens when you rub that balloon on the sweater, the charge that it creates, and then it follows up with questions for reflection for your students. And there are complete lessons available on the website as well.
Yeah, it's a great resource.
They're all linked.
Yeah.
Next, so this is the Next Gen Inquiry Quest. So I love this one. This is something that we created here at Van Andel Institute. These are asynchronous student-facing videos that you can use with your students to guide them through different science and engineering investigations. So they're meant to be very high engagement, and they're meant to be self-paced. So students can go through at their own pace, and the videos kind of guide them along, guide them through the investigation. So like the photos I have here, yours truly started as a news anchor here, and that one in particular was the case of the missing bearded dragon. So students were forensic scientists in that case, and I kind of brought them along through the videos, and they had to identify a mystery powder at a crime scene. And so they learned about physical and chemical properties of substances, and then they tried to solve a crime. So this is also a great option for your students.
Yeah, and we seem to always lose track of our bearded dragons, Corey.
We do, yes.
We go missing a lot.
They do, yes. And then our last tech idea, so think about robots and coding. So it's a very popular thing right now. It's a very important skill, coding is, for students as they grow up in the digital world. And so we use Sphero robots for our coding. And this is a really great robot to use because it can be used with kindergartners and it can be used with 12th graders. So it has a very broad application, but it does require an investment. It's a little expensive maybe to have a full set in your classroom, but that goes back to thinking about field trips. Whether it's with us, we do Sphero field trips. It doesn't have to be Sphero though. Thinking about your high school colleagues, they might have a robotics club at your local high school, right? So reaching out to them, how can you get your kids exposed to coding? It can be super powerful.
Awesome, thank you. Those are all great tech ideas. And to end the webinar, I just want to share a real quick idea. And we saved this for last just because it requires a more kind of transformational lesson planning change, which is all about thinking cross-curricularly. Instead of having math, ELA, science, and social studies very disconnected and very siloed, thinking about that in a more cross-curricular way. So I'll share really quickly 2 examples of that, and these are all in the HyperDoc as well. But if your science is kind of that hook, that phenomenon that engages the students, and here the students are answering the question, does wind or water cause more change to a sand tower? And they run through the investigation here. They do some measurements, they make observations, they make a claim, evidence and reasoning, but we don't just stop there because we want them to be change makers. We want them to design solutions. So we can't stop wind and rain, but they can design a solution to prevent erosion. So we challenge them to build a windbreak, and there you see the leaf blower again. That gets a lot of use here, and to test out their design. And so that's the investigation. That's the center part. But how can we connect that other content areas? Well, there's definitely math, 2nd grade, measurement data. They're using measurement tools to get the before and after and doing some subtraction. In their claim, evidence, and reasoning, we bring in this informational text to bring in the science part of that. And there's definitely a social studies implication here, weather and impact of both the environment, but also people's impact, both contributing to and preventing erosion. So a great example of thinking cross-curricularly using science as that hook. You can up that authenticity even more by engaging in more project-based learning approaches, which this is our What's in Your Water PBL unit. And the students learn all about water. They learn about water problems around the world, and they are challenged to do something about it. But then we also connect content to it. And this is just a 4th grade example. So you see the science there. The science is the heart of that investigation, in the investigations, but we bring in the math and the ELA, social studies, and also the SEL. So a very authentic way of learning cross-curricularly. All right, so we went through 5 really big ideas, and I hope you took away a few things, ideas, strategies that you can employ into your class this year even. And we'd love to keep the conversation going. So please reach out to us. Go to our website. We have a lot more there if you're interested in. And we have this big conference coming here. So if you're interested, any plans July 10th, 11th, love to have you here. Love to have you present too. Again, that's all on our website. And we have another webinar next month about standardized tests. My colleague Ben's going to give some awesome ways to supercharge that. And you know how important those are, and I know it's not always everyone's favorite topic, so it's be a great way to get some new ideas. And then finally, a big thank you to everyone that joined us today, and thank you for watching. If you're watching the recording, we do have a survey that as soon as this closes out, that if you would fill out, we're going to do a giveaway. So we will pick 3 winners. They'll be announced on Friday. We'll send out an email notifying them, but you have the opportunity to win either a Blue Apple project, NGI Quest, the virtual portion, and then a conference admission to our science conference this summer. So thank you very much. And Corey, that was a lot of fun.
It was, yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day and week.